Okay, hi students, welcome to our YouTube channel. So today our topic of discussion is empirical formula. Before going to start this topic, first of all I will tell you, like for example, like if we are given an unknown substance and we want to find its chemical formula. Like for example, we want to find its chemical formula. So here is chemical formula. So how do we begin? The question is, how do we begin? So first of all, we need to identify the elements that are present in the compound. Like first of all, the first step is identify the elements. And then the next step, that is here, as well as the number of atoms of each element, and then we can determine its percentage composition. So that is very important, percentage composition. Okay, like percentage composition by mass. And then we simply convert the mass values into amount in moles. So the third step, that is, we have to convert the percentage composition in moles. Okay, and then like we can simply convert the mass values into amount in moles, and which gives us the subscript in the chemical formula of the substance. So these are the steps we can follow for finding the chemical formula. Now here the question is, what is meant by empirical formula? So remember that the empirical formula is, which means it is derived from the observation in an experiment rather than from the theory. An empirical formula tells us the simplest ratio of combining elements. So it means the empirical formula, the definition of empirical formula is, here I am going to write, that is, the empirical formula is the simplest whole number ratio of atoms or ions in a compound. So that is, the simplest whole number ratio of atoms or ions in a compound is known as empirical formula. Alright, now the explanation, like how can we determine the empirical formula, and like how will you identify that which one is the empirical formula and which one is the molecular formula. For example here, but first of all I just indicated the molecular formula. So remember that the molecular formula tells us the actual number of atoms or kinds of atoms in a molecule of the substance. Like for example, I am going to tell you about like the benzene. Okay, the molecular formula of benzene, like the actual number of atoms that are present in a benzene, that contain 6 carbon and 6 hydrogen. So here the molecular formula is C6H6. That is the molecular formula. Now the question is, how will we determine the empirical formula? As I already told you that the empirical formula is the simplest whole number ratio of atoms or ions in a compound. So it means that here the ratio would be, like for example here the ratio is 6:6, so it means the ratio would be 1:1. So it means here the empirical formula would be CH. So that is the empirical formula. Alright. And in some cases the empirical formula and the molecular formula, that would be same. For example, in case of benzene and ethine, like in ethine and benzene, actually the benzene molecular formula is C6H6, while the benzene molecular formula is C6H6, while the ethine molecular formula, that will be C2H2. But when we calculated the empirical formula, then the empirical formula of benzene is CH, while the ethine empirical formula is also CH. But in some cases the empirical formula and molecular formula, that will be different. For example, like in case of in some cases here the empirical formula and the molecular formula would be same. For example, in case of water molecule, so as we know that the water molecule, the molecular formula of water, that is H2O, and here the ratio is 2:1. So it means that is the simplest ratio. So empirical formula would also be H2O. So that is about empirical formula and molecular formula difference. Now the question is, how can we calculate the empirical formula? So it means our next topic is calculating an empirical formula. So as we discussed earlier that for calculation of empirical formula, we need percentage composition of the substance. For example, here we need percentage composition by mass. Like for example, in magnesium oxide, like we are unknown about the magnesium oxide, okay, like the formula, let's suppose, like the magnesium oxide contain 60% magnesium while 40% oxygen. So calculate this empirical formula. So for empirical formula calculation, first of all, we suppose that this means in fact that in 100 grams of the compound, there will be total, like for example 60 plus 40, that would be 100%. So it means that there will be 100 gram of compound contain 60 grams of magnesium while the 40 grams of oxygen. So as we discussed, like here from the percentage composition we can convert it into moles. So it means that here our next step would be like we need to convert the magnesium mass and oxygen mass into moles. For example, here 60 grams, that is the mass of magnesium, divided by the molar mass or the atomic mass of magnesium, that will be 24.31. So when we convert it and when we divide it, so then the moles will equal to N is equal to here 2.47 mole. So that is for magnesium. Alright, now the next one, that is you need to convert the mass of oxygen again into moles. So it means here you have to say that, for example, that the first one is N1, now there will be N2 is equal to 40 divided by, as we can say, 16 or 15.99, the atomic mass. So that will equal to 2.50. So now we got 2.47, the one value, and the second one is 2.50. So it means when we divide it by simplest number, so that is 2.47 both. So we got here 1 and 1. So it means the ratio would be here 1:1, like the mole ratio of magnesium and oxygen, Mg ratio oxygen, that is 1:1. So here the empirical formula is, the empirical formula of magnesium oxide would be MgO. So since the magnesium oxide is an ionic compound, the empirical formula indicates that the ratio of magnesium ion to oxide ion is 1:1. So from the percentage composition, we can merely tell the ratio of atoms or ions, not the actual number. Like based only the empirical evidence from the investigation, the formula of this compound could be MgO or Mg2O2 or Mg3O3 or any other multiple. So we would need to know the molar mass of the compound to be able to determine the molecular formula. Okay students, so that is the way in which we can find or calculate the empirical formula from the percentage composition. So in the next video, we will solve some problems relating to empirical formula. So if you like our video, then kindly do subscribe our channel and share this video. So guys, goodbye. We'll see you again.